"I resign," Senior Surveyor Vex announced, their crystalline appendages trembling as they placed the data crystal on Director Needle's desk. "Find someone else for this assignment." Director Needle's sensory filaments rippled in confusion. In 300 cycles of Galactic Council service, they had never seen Vex as rattled. The Senior Surveyor had cataloged gas giants with diamond rain and mapped the plasma storms of the Carina Nebula without flinching. "The readings must be incorrect," Needle suggested, interfacing with the data crystal. The numbers flowing through their consciousness made their filaments curl. "This can't be right. Oxygen levels that high would be corrosive." "That's just the beginning," Vex chittered. "The gravity is crushing, the temperature swings are lethal, and the atmospheric pressure." They paused, all four of their eyes blinking simultaneously. "And there's supposedly sapient life there. Either our equipment is malfunctioning on an unprecedented scale, or what? Or we found a species that evolved in hell." Thor wasn't told about Vex's resignation when they accepted the Earth assignment. As the youngest member of the Xenobiological Survey Corps, they were simply eager for their first solo mission. Their enthusiasm lasted right up until their ship's systems started throwing errors at the edge of the system. "Warning. Environmental parameters exceed safety margins," the ship's AI announced for the third time. "Run diagnostics again," Cathor ordered, their tentacles dancing over the control surfaces. The ship had to be malfunctioning. The alternative was unthinkable. The diagnostics came back clean. Every sensor was working perfectly, which meant Thor's epidermis shifted from its normal calming blue to an anxious green as they studied the readings. The planet ahead shouldn't exist, at least not with life on it. The atmospheric composition alone violated 3 different laws of xenobiology. Their communication pod pulsed with an incoming message. "Survey ship RC-927. This is Earth Control. Please acknowledge." Thor's color shifted again, this time to surprised orange. They weren't supposed to make contact yet. Standard procedure was to observe from orbit for at least 1 lunar cycle before. "Survey ship RC-927. Your trajectory suggests atmospheric entry. Be advised our gravity well is stronger than you might expect. Please adjust your vector by 0.3 degrees for optimal entry." They were tracking their approach that precisely. Cathor's professional curiosity began to override their anxiety. The civilization down there wasn't just surviving. They were sophisticated enough to monitor near-orbital trajectories and calculate entry vectors. "Earth Control, this is RC-927. Acknowledging vector adjustment." Thor paused, then added, "Thank you for the assistance." "You're welcome, RC-927. Fair warning. Our weather systems are a bit turbulent today. You might want to reinforce your shields for entry." Weather. They needed shields because of weather. Thor's ship shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere, and every warning system screamed to life simultaneously. The shield strength dropped 10% in seconds, even with the reinforcement. Through the view screen, Thor watched in horror as actual bolts of plasma arsed through the cloud layer below. "Earth Control to RC-927. Don't worry about the lightning. It's pretty normal this time of year. Just keep your current vector and you'll be fine." Normal. They called this normal. As Cathor's ship descended through layers of what their sensors insisted was aerosolized acid, past electric discharges that could power a small city, and into gravity that made their internal organs ache, one thought kept repeating in their mind. What kind of species could evolve here? More importantly, what kind of species could evolve here and consider these conditions unremarkable? Thor had a feeling they were about to find out, and they weren't entirely sure they were ready for the answer. The reinforced survey pod crumpled like wet paper. Cathor stared at the wreckage through their ship's viewport, unable to process what they were seeing. The pod had been designed to withstand the crushing depths of gas giant cores. Yet Earth's atmospheric pressure, combined with something the locals called humidity, had caused structural failure in under 6 hours. "Would you like us to send up a shuttle?" Earth Control asked, their voice carrying what Cthor's translator suggested was amusement. No, Cthor replied, their pride stinging more than their fear. I'll use the emergency descent suit. The suit was their last option. A piece of equipment rated for environments that would kill most species instantly. Cthor had never expected to actually need it. Your choice, Earth Control responded. But you might want to wait a few hours. We're getting some acid precipitation. Cthor checked their instruments. You mean the hydrogen oxide compound falling from your atmosphere? My sensors indicate its P is nearly neutral. A new voice cut in. Oh, you mean the rain? Nah, that's not the acid stuff. Acid rain's way worse, but we mostly fixed that a few decades ago. This is just regular rain. Thor's tentacles curled in confusion. There was regular acid rain, and then there was worse acid rain, and the locals had somehow fixed it. They made a note in their log. Species demonstrates extraordinary atmospheric engineering capabilities. The descent was worse than they'd imagined. Even through the emergency suit, Earth's gravity pulled at them like a hungry void. Their supplementary limbs refused to function under the crushing pressure, leaving them with just their primary appendages. By the time they reached the surface, Cthor felt like they'd aged a century. Welcome to Montana, a human greeted them. The creature stood upright in the punishing gravity without any visible support system, its endoskeleton somehow supporting its mass. Hope you don't mind, but we had to move your landing site. There's a bacterial bloom in the original location. Bacterial bloom. Cthor's translator struggled with the concept. Yeah, nothing serious. Just some strep throat going around. Figured you wouldn't want to land in that. Cthor frantically accessed their xenobiology database. The results made their chromatophores pale to white. The nothing serious bacteria would be classified as a civilization-ending plague in most systems. You live with these pathogens? They asked, their voice modulator quivering. The human shrugged. A gesture Cthor's cultural database suggested indicated casual dismissal. Our immune systems handle most of it. The really nasty stuff we vaccinate against. Cthor made another note. Species appears to have weaponized their own biology as defense against endemic pathogens. Would you like a tour of the facility? The human asked, gesturing toward a nearby structure. We've got coffee inside. Coffee. Hot beverage, mostly water, caffeine, and some organic compounds. Helps with the gravity adjustment. Cthor's suit sensors analyzed the mentioned beverage as the human led them inside. The results were terrifying. This is a neurotoxin, they protested. Well, yeah, in high doses. This is just enough to give you a nice buzz. The human took a long drink. We've got tea if you prefer something milder. Cthor watched in horror as other humans in the facility consumed the neurotoxic brew while casually discussing something called weather patterns. One mentioned an upcoming thunderstorm with the same tone one might use to discuss a mild inconvenience. Is your species immune to electricity? Cthor asked, dreading the answer. Nah, lightning will kill you dead, the human replied cheerfully. That's why we invented lightning rods. Want to see our collection of fulgurates? Cthor made their final note of the day. Preliminary assessment. Earth is not a planet. Earth is a lethal weapon that somehow produced life. Recommendation. Classify as extreme hazard zone. Additional recommendation. Review evolution theories. Nothing about this should be possible. They hadn't even made it through their first day, and already Cthor understood why Vexex had resigned. The impossible part wasn't that life existed here. The impossible part was that humans seemed to be enjoying it. Today, we'll be observing basic human military training. Cthor's guide, Sarah, announced with unsettling cheerfulness. Nothing too exciting. Cthor had learned that when humans said, nothing too exciting, they should activate all their emergency protocols. They double-checked their reinforced environment suit and followed Sarah to what humans called a helicopter. a primitive flying machine that stayed airborne by beating the air into submission. "Are these vehicles safe?" Cthor asked, watching the rotating blades with concern. "Safe enough. Only had 2 crashes this year." Sarah grinned. "Don't worry, we got parachutes." Parachutes. "Yeah, in case we need to jump out." Sarah patted a pack strapped to her back. "Standard safety equipment." Thor's translator must have malfunctioned. She couldn't have just suggested jumping from a perfectly functional aircraft. The neural connection to their data recorder pulsed as they added another note. "Humans consider controlled falling through corrosive atmosphere a safety measure." The helicopter lifted off, fighting against Earth's brutal gravity, with a series of violent vibrations that Cthor's species would consider a near-death experience. Sarah called it a little choppy. They approached a training ground where human military recruits gathered. Thor expected to see advanced combat simulations or weapons training. Instead, they watched in horror as humans voluntarily submerged themselves into hydrogen monoxide. "It's called the swim test," Sarah explained. "They have to stay afloat for 12 minutes and swim 500 meters. In liquid water. Without protection." Thor's chromatophores flashed distress patterns. The pressure at that depth. "It's only 3 meters deep at most," Sarah interrupted. "The hard part is doing it in full gear." Thor watched a human emerge from the water, their body temperature significantly lower than normal, yet showing no signs of distress. Another note. Humans possess unprecedented thermal regulation capabilities. The next exercise involved recruits crawling through particulate matter, while explosive devices detonated nearby. Sarah called it the confidence course. "The explosions build confidence?" Cthor asked. "Well, yeah. Once you know you can keep going while things are blowing up around you, regular training seems easier." Cthor's species had no equivalent for the logic humans used. They added another note. "Species appears to normalize extreme danger through repeated exposure." The day's observations continued with humans engaging in what they called hand-to-hand combat training. Thor watched in scientific fascination as recruits deliberately struck each other with sufficient force to cause minor skeletal damage. "Shouldn't we intervene?" Thor asked as a recruit hit the ground hard. "Nah, they're fine. Just learning to fall properly." Sarah pointed to the fallen recruit, who indeed rose immediately and continued fighting. "See, barely a bruise." Thor's next note read, "Humans possess remarkable regenerative capabilities, possibly evolved from frequent skeletal stress." The final exercise of the day involved recruits preparing their own sustenance from local organic matter. Thor's sensors detected no scanning equipment, no toxin analyzers, not even basic molecular identification tools. "How do they know it's safe to consume?" they asked. Sarah looked confused. "You mean the MREs? They're preset meals, though I wouldn't exactly call them safe for your taste buds. But how do they identify harmful compounds?" "Oh, that." Sarah shrugged. "Most of us learned what's edible as kids. You know, camping, survival training, that sort of thing. Plus, if it smells really bad, probably don't eat it." Thor's final note of the day was underlined 3 times. Humans possess integrated toxin detection systems and willingly consume substances they acknowledge taste terrible. Evolution has gone too far. As they prepared to return to their ship, Sarah mentioned the next day's schedule. "Nothing major tomorrow, just some desert survival training. Hope your suit can handle a little heat." Cthor had learned enough about human understatement to ask, "Define a little heat." "Oh, you know, maybe 45 Celsius. It's spring, so it won't be too bad." Cthor sent an urgent request to the Galactic Council for heat-shielding upgrades. They had a feeling tomorrow would add several more impossible notes to their increasingly unbelievable report. Prince Zaxthar of the Varaxian Empire had conquered the methane seas of Titan VY. He'd survived the plasma storms of the Carina Nebula. He'd even spent a full rotation in the crushing gravity wells of the Antares binary system. So when he read Cthor's preliminary report about Earth, He knew it had to be exaggerated. Impossible, he declared to his royal court, his armored exoskeleton gleaming under the throne room's lights. No Class M planet could possess all these hazards simultaneously. This surveyor is clearly attempting to build reputation through sensationalism. His declaration reached the Galactic Council within hours. Thor, still struggling with Earth's gravity in Montana, received an urgent message. The Varaxian prince was coming to prove them wrong. A Varaxian is visiting, Sarah asked when Thor told her. Cool. Tell them to bring sunscreen. Sunscreen. Yeah, UV radiation is pretty intense this time of year. Wouldn't want them to get burned. Thor started to explain that Varaxians were famous for their natural radiation shielding, then remembered everything else they'd learned about Earth, and sent the warning anyway. Prince Zaxthar's ship entered Earth's atmosphere at dawn, ignoring all suggested approach vectors from Earth control. His personal shield technology, he assured his worried attendants, could handle anything a Class M planet could throw at him. The shield failed halfway through descent. Atmospheric composition is corroding the energy matrix, his ship's AI reported. Shield effectiveness down to 60% and dropping. Impossible, Zaxthar said again, but with less conviction. They landed at the designated coordinates, where a small human welcoming committee waited. Thor was there too, their environment suit now supplemented with 3 backup systems. Welcome to Earth, Sarah called out as the Varaxian ship's hatch opened. We've got a lovely day planned. She never finished the sentence. Prince Zaxthar emerged from his ship without any environmental protection, stood upright against Earth's gravity through sheer pride, and immediately discovered why the humans had tried to warn him about UV radiation. The screen was recorded by 17 different devices and would later become the most viewed content in Galactic Council history. My exoskeleton. The prince howled. It's burning. Yeah, Sarah said, already rushing forward with emergency sunscreen. Earth's magnetic field lets in a lot of solar radiation. Should have mentioned that earlier. Actually, we did mention that earlier. The prince's natural armor, capable of deflecting particle beam weapons, had begun to smoke slightly. The reaction between Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere and the UV radiation was essentially turning his protective shell into an improvised oven. Get me out of here, he ordered his ship's crew. Now. 3 hours after arrival, Prince Zaxthar's ship departed Earth's atmosphere. The ship's external cameras captured an image that would circulate through the galaxy. The prince's once pristine exoskeleton now bore discolorations that his species' medical experts would spend months trying to fix. You know, Sarah said to Thor as they watched the ship leave, he really should have checked the weather forecast. Tomorrow would have been cloudy. Thor added a new note to their report. Local stars radiation alone capable of defeating advanced Varaxian defense systems. Humans counter this daily hazard with topical cream. The prince's very public humiliation had an unexpected effect. Rather than discrediting Thor's reports, it confirmed them. Within days, the Galactic Council was flooded with requests from various species' military and adventure organizations. If Earth could defeat a Varaxian prince in less time than it took to prepare a human breakfast, they reasoned, then surviving its conditions would be the ultimate proof of capability. Thor watched the request notifications pile up with a sense of dread. They sent an urgent message to the Council. Strongly advise against treating Earth as a challenge course. Current survival rate predictions for unprepared visitors. Approximately 3%. The Council's response was brief. Prediction noted. Current application count, 10,000 and rising. Prepare arrival protocols. Thor looked at Sarah. They're all going to come here, aren't they? Yep. She grinned. Better stock up on sunscreen. Welcome to Earth's Terrestrial Survival Academy, Sarah announced to the first batch of alien cadets. Today's goal is simple. Walk unassisted for 10 meters in Earth gravity. Thor, now serving as the Academy's safety officer, watched the assembled group. They represented 12 different species and some of the galaxy's most elite warriors. The Drachnid champion had supposedly survived a black hole's event horizon. The quantum monk had achieved consciousness synchronization with 6 parallel universes. None of them could currently stand up. Remember, Sarah continued, failure to complete this task will result in immediate course termination. We can't teach advanced survival techniques to anyone who can't walk on their own. A Centaurian warrior raised one of their phase-shifted limbs. Query: is artificial assistance truly forbidden? Our species typically operates at 1/8 this gravitational force. Completely forbidden, Sarah confirmed. You'll need to build up your natural strength. Think of it as a foundation for everything else. Thor added another note to their ever-growing report. Humans appear to have evolved redundant muscular systems specifically to counter their planet's gravitational pull. The first attempt was catastrophic. The Drachnid champion, despite their crystalline reinforced bone structure, managed 2 steps before collapsing. The quantum monk tried levitating using parallel universe energy and gave themselves a nosebleed. The Centaurian's phase-shifted limbs simply phased straight through the floor. Don't worry, Sarah said to the fallen aliens. This is pretty normal for day 1. We'll start you all on gravity adjustment exercises. Push-ups first. What is a push-up? Asked the Drachnid champion. 30 seconds later, they had their answer, and Thor had to add another note. Humans regularly practice fighting their planet's gravity as a form of exercise. They appear to enjoy it. By day's end, 9 of the 12 cadets had withdrawn. The Drachnid champion, despite their reputation, submitted transfer papers to a low-gravity training facility. The quantum monk discovered that consciousness synchronization didn't help with muscle soreness. Not bad, Sarah said, reviewing the results. 3 survivors is actually above average. Thor checked their data. The Centaurian adapted their phase shifting to work with the gravity. The mechtoid reconfigured their servos. And the Volcrin. Wait, how is the Volcrin still standing? Their species evolved in 0 gravity. Sarah grinned. They'd been doing extra practice at night. Found them in the gym at 3 a.m. doing squats. The next day's lesson was supposed to be about atmospheric adaptation. Instead, Sarah took one look at the 3 remaining cadets and announced a change of plans. Pop quiz, she declared. We're going on a 5-kilometer hike. In the rain. The mechtoid servos whirred in distress. Our atmospheric sensors indicate acidic precipitation is imminent. Yeah, that's the point. Can't always choose your weather on Earth. Better waterproof those joints. Thor watched the 3 cadets struggle through what Sarah called a light drizzle. The Centaurian's phase shifting couldn't quite handle being wet and dealing with gravity simultaneously. The mechtoid's joints began to rust despite their waterproofing. But the Volcrin, to everyone's surprise, seemed to be enjoying themselves. The sensation of water falling from above is invigorating, they announced, their 0-gravity evolved form somehow adapting to both the rain and gravity. Thor added what felt like their 1000th note. Some species show remarkable adaptation potential when exposed to Earth conditions. Others experience catastrophic failure when encountering the concept of weather. By week's end, only the Volcrin remained. They had mastered walking, learned to handle rain, and even attempted something Sarah called jogging. Congratulations, Sarah told them during the graduation ceremony. You've completed basic Earth survival training. You're now qualified to handle roughly 10% of what Earth can throw at you. The Volcrin's bioluminescent patterns showed confusion. Only 10%. Well, we haven't covered extreme temperatures, varied terrain, wildlife encounters, or bacterial resistance yet. But don't worry. Sarah's smile was bright. That's what advanced training is for. Thor watched the Volcrin's patterns shift from confusion to determination and added their final note of the week. Earth doesn't just test survival capability. It creates it. Professor Ixtal of the Galactic Archaeological Institute stared at the ancient sailing vessel preserved in the museum. Their tentacles trembled as they took readings for the 3rd time. This can't be correct. They muttered. "Cthor, please verify my findings." Cthor, now Earth's official xenobiological liaison, floated closer in their environment suit. "What seems to be the problem?" According to these scans, humans crossed their planet's largest liquid water body in wooden containers, before developing electromagnetic propulsion, before mastering atmospheric flight. They just got into boats made of plant matter and crossed an ocean. "Oh, do you mean the Mayflower?" Sarah added, walking up to them. "Yeah, that's not even the most impressive one. You should check out the Polynesian voyages. They crossed the Pacific using the stars for navigation." The archaeologist's colors shifted to deep purple, a sign of cognitive distress. "But the storms, the waves, the salt corrosion." Ixtal's assistant chittered. "Our species developed spaceflight before we dared cross our oceans, and ours are a tenth the size." Cthor added another note to their endless report. Humans historically chose to cross deadly water barriers using primitive technology, apparently for the purpose of exploration. The museum tour continued, each exhibit causing further distress among the alien researchers. They stopped at a display about Mount Everest. "The placard must be incorrect," Ixtal declared. "It claims humans climbed this mountain before inventing powered environmental suits. First documented summit was in 1953, Sarah confirmed. They used supplemental oxygen. But yeah, mostly it was just warm clothes and determination." The archaeological team's collective color shifted to stress white when they saw the equipment used: wool clothes, leather boots, and primitive oxygen tanks. But the temperature differentials, the atmospheric pressure drop, the wind speeds. Ixtal's assistant was practically vibrating. How did they survive? "Some didn't," Sarah said soberly. "But people kept trying anyway. Something about the human spirit and pushing boundaries." Thor's note: "Humans view fatal environment conditions as boundaries to be pushed rather than warnings to be heeded." The next exhibit featured early polar exploration. Ixtal's team refused to believe humans had reached the poles using what appeared to be primitive insulation technology and animal-powered transport. They pulled their supplies on sleds, one researcher noted in horror, through temperatures that would freeze their cellular structure. "For fun." "Well, not just for fun," Sarah corrected. "For science too. And national pride. And because the poles were there." Cthor added, "Human motivation for surviving lethal conditions often amounts to because it's there." The breaking point came at the deep-sea exploration exhibit. The archaeological team watched footage of humans descending into oceanic trenches, facing pressures that would crush most spacecraft. "Wait," Ixtal interrupted the video. "They explored these depths before developing energy shielding, in vessels made of metal and glass." "Still do," Sarah said cheerfully. "Some researchers prefer the old-school submersibles. Says it gives them a better feel for the environment." The team's final report to the Galactic Institute caused a sensation. Every human achievement now required a footnote. They did it all while surviving on a death world. Their art, their science, their technology. It wasn't despite Earth's conditions, but because of them. In conclusion, Ixtal wrote, "Human history must be re-examined in its proper context. What appeared to be primitive solutions were, in fact, incredibly robust innovations that functioned in conditions that should have made civilization impossible. Their spacecraft weren't simple. They were designed by a species that assumed any vessel should withstand acid, pressure extremes, and temperature variations. Their medical technology wasn't basic. It evolved to combat pathogens that would qualify as weapons of mass destruction anywhere else." Thor added their own note to the report. "Most significantly, humans appear entirely unaware that their achievements are extraordinary. When asked about historical survival challenges, they typically respond with either 'it wasn't that bad' or 'someone had to do it.'" "You know," Sarah said, reading over their shoulders, "you guys might enjoy learning about our deep-sea hydrothermal vent researchers next." Both aliens immediately filed for hazard pay increases. The Luxurian cruise ship's distress signal cut through Earth's atmosphere like a knife. Thor, monitoring communications from the newly established Galactic Embassy in Montana, felt their chromatophores pale as they read the emergency broadcast. Engine failure during atmospheric entry. Hull breach imminent. Toxic atmosphere leak. Gravity compensation failing. Request immediate evacuation. The ship was carrying 300 passengers from 12 different species. None of them evolved to survive Earth's conditions. The vessel was dropping into one of the planet's most dangerous regions, an active volcanic zone in what humans called Iceland. Deploying emergency response robots, the Galactic Council's crisis team announced. Estimated survival chance, 12%. Belay that, a new voice cut in. Sarah's voice. Montana search and rescue en route. Hold your robots. Thor watched in horror as their monitor showed a primitive Earth aircraft, a helicopter, lifting off. No energy shielding, no gravity compensation, just whirling blades and human determination. You can't be serious, the Council Crisis Coordinator protested. The volcanic gases alone would corrode. That's why we're wearing masks, Sarah interrupted, her voice crackling through the comm. Standard volcano rescue protocol. Thor added another note to their report. Humans have standard protocols for rescuing beings from active volcanoes. They consider this normal. The cruise ship crashed 2 kilometers from an active lava flow. The impact cracked its hull further, exposing the passengers to Earth's full atmospheric pressure. The Council's rescue robots approached, then failed one by one as their systems succumbed to the combination of toxic gases, extreme heat, and corrosive chemicals. That's when the humans arrived. Thor watched through surveillance feeds as Sarah's team landed their helicopter in conditions that should have torn it apart. 6 humans jumped out, wearing what appeared to be laughably basic protective gear, insulated suits, and filtered masks. The Council's most advanced rescue robots just failed. Thor transmitted to them. Please retreat to a safe distance. Can't, Sarah replied, her voice muffled by her mask. Got people to save. Josh, grab the cutting torch. Maria, set up the pressure tents. Let's move. The humans didn't just survive in the lethal conditions, they thrived. They cut through the ship's hull with primitive thermal tools, established emergency pressure zones with basic force field generators, and physically carried species twice their size through toxic clouds to safety. How are they doing this? The Council Coordinator demanded. Our environmental analysis shows 17 different lethal conditions in that zone. Thor watched as Sarah's team made trip after trip into the wreck. Their suits began to show signs of corrosion. Their oxygen tanks ran low. The volcanic activity increased, and still they went back in. Last one. Sarah's voice crackled through the comm 3 hours later. A Centaurian elder, far too large for a human to carry, was being carefully guided to the rescue helicopter. Everyone accounted for. 300 passengers safe. The footage of the rescue went viral across the galaxy within hours. Commentary sections exploded with variations of a single theme. They did it without powered armor, without robotic assistance, without gravity neutralizers. When the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to discuss the incident, the footage played on repeat. They watched as humans repeatedly entered conditions that had destroyed their most advanced rescue robots, using what the Council species considered primitive technology. We must reassess our understanding of human capabilities, the High Counselor declared. They didn't just survive these conditions, they operated effectively enough to save others. Thor added their final note about the incident. Humans appear to perform at their peak when facing conditions that should kill them. Most notably, they prioritize saving others over their own safety, displaying a form of collective survival instinct that defies conventional xenobiological understanding. Later, when asked about the rescue, Sarah simply shrugged. It's what we train for. Besides, the conditions weren't that bad. Not that bad. Thor's translator struggled to convey their disbelief. The volcanic gases melted your equipment. Yeah, but it was a dry heat, Sarah grinned. Want to see the really challenging rescues? Wait till winter avalanche season. Thor immediately filed for another hazard pay increase. The graduation ceremony for the first Earth-capable Special Forces unit drew dignitaries from across the galaxy. After 5 years of failed attempts and countless washouts, the Andromeda Elite Corps had finally produced 6 graduates who could operate unassisted in Earth conditions. Thor, now Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, watched as Sarah pinned primitive metal badges to their environmental suits. "Congratulations," she announced. "You've survived what we consider a mild spring in Minnesota. We're very proud." The graduates' tentacles twitched with pride. They had earned the galaxy's most prestigious certification, proving they could handle 1G gravity, oxygen atmosphere, and liquid water precipitation simultaneously. Only 2 had needed cybernetic enhancements. "Remember," Sarah continued, "this certification is only valid for temperate zones. Extreme weather training is a separate course." "There's more extreme weather than what we endured," one graduate asked, their translator struggling to convey their horror. "Oh yeah. Wait till you hear about hurricanes." Thor added another note to their now legendary report. 5 years of intensive training required for elite alien forces to match baseline human environmental tolerances. Humans consider this amusing. The ceremony was interrupted by an emergency broadcast. A human disaster response team had been requested on Proxima III to handle what locals called an extinction-level plasma storm. "Looks pretty mild," the human team leader commented, reviewing the data. "Might not even need the heavy suits." The Proximan ambassador's crystalline structure vibrated in disbelief. "The energy discharge is sufficient to melt standard starship hulls." "Yeah, but it's not acid rain and plasma storms," the human replied. "That's next week's forecast in Florida." The humans' casual competence in lethal conditions had revolutionized galactic emergency services. Their rates were astronomical. Hazard pay, calculated against Earth conditions, meant a single human responder earned more than an entire alien emergency crew. But they were worth every credit. "Did you see the latest recruitment stats?" Sarah asked Thor after the ceremony. 98% of alien special forces now train on Earth. We've had to build new facilities." Thor checked their data. The numbers were staggering. Earth had become the galaxy's ultimate proving ground. Military units, emergency responders, exploration teams, all came to Earth to test themselves. Most failed. Those who succeeded earned instant respect throughout known space. "The Galactic Council is concerned," Thor admitted. "They worry about Earth's growing influence. Some species are genetically modifying their next generation to better handle Earth conditions. Smart of them." Sarah nodded. "Evolution's a good teacher." A commotion at the ceremony's edge drew their attention. A Drachnid warrior, their crystalline exoskeleton gleaming, was challenging one of the human instructors. "Your training methods are inefficient," the warrior declared. "Why do we waste time on physical adaptation when we could use technological solutions?" The instructor, a weathered woman named Chen, smiled. "Good question. Pop quiz. Your tech fails in the field. What's your backup plan?" "We have redundant systems. They fail too." "Now what?" The warrior's crystals dimmed. "We retreat." "Wrong answer." Chen pointed to the graduates. "They can survive because they've built the capability into themselves. Tech helps, but it breaks. Biology adapts." Thor added their final note to the report. "Earth's greatest contribution to galactic civilization isn't technology or knowledge. It's a fundamental lesson. Don't just survive conditions. Become strong enough to thrive in them." The ceremony concluded with a traditional human celebration, an outdoor barbecue in what they called mosquito season. Half the alien delegates retreated to their ships when they learned what mosquitoes were. "You know what's funny?" Sarah mused, swatting casually at the blood-drinking insects. "When humans finally reach the stars, everyone thought we'd need to adapt to alien worlds. Instead, the galaxy adapts to Earth standards," Thor finished. Though I still don't understand why you live here voluntarily. Sarah grinned, lifting her drink. The neurotoxic coffee that humans seemed addicted to. Where else would we train for the really dangerous stuff? Thor decided not to ask what humans considered really dangerous. Some questions were better left unanswered.